let's face it, who would be sympathetic to me? Really? Well, it was your decision. You know that old adage, you made your bed, go lie in it, right? So why would I expect sympathy? And that was the other thing. It was my decision. I have handed over my power, financial power, to men consistently, continuously, and forever. And it's something that I'm trying to break down at the moment. 1 minute you're sitting in your glass box extension eating organic muesli, and the next you're wearing a latex catsuit, high on MDMA, snogging a woman. You're like, how did this happen?
Welcome to the Heartbreak to Happiness show with Sarah Davison. If you're struggling with a breakup and you feel shocked, angry, betrayed, devastated, or sad and alone, then this podcast is for you. Best-selling author and award-winning host Sarah Davison shares how you too can get on with your life to heal, grow, and move from heartbreak to happiness. Here's your host, Sarah Davison.
Welcome back to the show. Today's episode is sponsored by the leading family law department of Pennington, Manchester, Cooper, a full-service international law firm with its main base in London. The department provides expertise in all areas of family law and specialises in high-value financial and complex children cases. The lawyers believe in offering an outstanding level of service and support to their clients, many of whom have international connections. To contact the team, please email anna.warwood@penningtonslaw.com and quote Sarah Davison. I am super excited about my guest today, Stacey Duguid. Now, Stacy is a journalist and a fashion editor and a simfluencer. Now we're going to find out what that means, as well as a writer for The Telegraph, The Times. She's also a mum. She has a dog and she is a right giggle. So I can't wait to get stuck in with her. Welcome, Stacy. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks so much for having me, and I'm sorry I was late.
Oh, we can wait forever for you. I've been waiting forever, actually, to get you on my podcast. So I'm glad you're here. We always have such a giggle when you're in the studio.
Yeah.
In my intro to you, I used the word that I don't know what it means. I was wondering if you could tell us what you mean by simfluencer.
Well, a simfluencer is someone who's the opposite of an influencer. I think that influence, people of influence is one thing, right? Politicians and, charitable entrepreneurs and everything else. But influencers have become these kind of like beige and bland and boring, like, everyone's looking the same. I'm talking on Instagram, obviously. One night, after a few tipples, I was like, fuck it, I'm a sinfluencer. And then I put a little devil sign emoji beside it. And then my son and his mate started following me. And then my son said, Mom, what is a sinfluencer? Are you a porn star? And I was like, no, it was just a kind of rebellion against the kind of homogenized, bland, beige, boring bollocks. And he was like, well, it looks like you're a porn star. Anyway, so I've removed it. But a sinfluencer, I suppose, was a bit of a rebellious move to say, why can't not all women need to adhere to the same codes, whether that's dressing, whether that's age defined, whether that's societally defined. And I think I need to find a better word for it. That doesn't upset the teenagers.
I do love it, though. I do love it. I mean, your story is fascinating and you've always got so many interesting stories. Why don't we, for my listeners, take it back to how did you know when you were married that things were slightly going off track?
It was probably like the week before.
The week before?
Yeah. I think that, a lot of what happened with us, and I never go into the full detail of it to protect, obviously, him and my children. But I think when I look back and, you can reflect, and I think a lot of what happened was my financial illiteracy. I think there's a lot of, I think it's the last thing for female empowerment. Well, one of many things. Okay, that's not quite true. But women are so kind of financially illiterate. And I think that when we go into a relationship, partnership, long-term, living with someone, certainly, definitely marrying someone, there should be a kind of government, almost like you have to do this by law, a 6-week course. So How are you going to save? How many times a week are you going to have sex? That's probably not going to be on the government forum, but that's probably another forum, simfluencer.com. But simple things like, what does pension look like? What does retirement look like? So the week before our wedding, I had, as usual, I'm very neurodivergent, and which has been exacerbated by menopause, but we can talk about that later. I had a tax bill, right, and he flipped out. I terribly sort of, ill-equipped to talk about money. And I felt that we were going into something together without having had the kind of fundamental basic conversations of life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do, right? Because you see marriage as like a romantic thing, not a business agreement, but actually when you're merging two lifestyles, to like potential homes or your financial situation, it is really a bit of a business.
It's a business deal
discussion as well.
Would you ever go into any other contract without a contract? No. So why are we signing marriage papers without fully knowing, unless of course you're the 0.1 or 0.01% and you've got a prenup and you've actually sat sensibly with lawyers, etc. But how many average, ordinary people go into the biggest contract of their lives without an actual contract?
Yeah, we just don't.
We don't. No. Why not? Why not? Why not? Because I think that women have handed over their power, fiscal embarrassment, whatever it is, inherited sort of like, ooh, I don't talk about money. It's not sexy. It's not feminine. And we hand over the power to our male partner. And I'm obviously, this is a gender bias thing, and patriarchy exists, of course, across all genders and, same-sex relationships. But I'm saying, as a woman, I have handed over my power, financial power, to men consistently, continuously, and forever. And it's something that I'm trying to break down at the moment, 3 years out of my marriage.
I do think that finances are usually one of the top reasons actually why people do get divorced.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I think communication is a big thing, but actually underlying that, it could be issues around finance that we're just not talking about. Any issues that get sort of pushed under the carpet and not talked about can stack up over time. So it's quite common actually.
I mean, when we did that event together in that hotel ages ago, it was such a brilliant event, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fun. And my favourite bit was having you and Rosie. And Rosie was talking about her lovely divorce out, and she went dating and all the lovely things she'd done. And then you started sharing some of your stories about sex dens.
Torture garden. God's sake, it was a phase, okay?
And drugs. And it was just the polar opposite of each other, which was just really interesting for everybody to hear.
I think I said, what did I say? 1 minute you're sitting in your glass box extension eating organic muesli, and the next you're wearing a latex catsuit, high on MDMA, snogging a woman. You're like, how did this happen?
The audience loved it, as I'm sure this one will. So we will get to that story.
Funny. But what I really found interesting about, because you did a whole day and it was about narcissism.
Yes.
Was financial control.
Yeah.
And I've had a limited experience of financial control, not in my own relationship, but observing others. And it is brutal. My gosh. Yeah. And actually, but massive generalization, please don't write to me and complain. I think a lot of women, because we're so timid around the conversation of money, I'm not saying that it goes as far as financial control, but we allow ourselves to be financially controlled in some way or other.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it we do allow, but does Disney have a lot to answer for, do you think? Because when we grew up listening to and watching Disney movies and rom-coms, there's no sort of financial discussions going on in those either, are there?
No, I mean, I think our education system has a lot to answer for. I mean, certainly Disney features highly in my book because as a northern, I was born in Manchester, raised in Edinburgh, which is why I have this hybrid accent, but we were working class in Manchester. Definitely not working class in Scotland. It's funny because my mother had remarried, but as a working class northern family, even though the women had like full-time jobs, they still came home and they did the cleaning, they did the laundry, did the ironing, did the cooking. So they had several jobs all, but
so doing everything.
Everything. Even then, finances were not discussed. Even then.
Wow.
Never. And my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother, there's a place in Manchester, outskirts of Manchester, called Ashton. And I was born in Ashton Hospital, and I survived. And I lived to tell the tale. And my great-grandmother rather, used to clean the public toilets. And she used to take my mum along with her.
Right.
Because, of course, my grandmother was working in a carpet shop. So, you know, even though I've had this very strong work ethic, as an example, from the women in my family, and by the way, my mum's thrifty, and my grandmother too, because she was war generation.
Right.
What happened to me? I think it's our ladette, Gen X, you can have it all, post-feminism fallout from watching our mothers do, well, in my case, manual hard work. And then suddenly we're like, so Cosmopolitan magazine is telling me I can have it all. I'm going to fucking have it all. And then some on a podium.
Yeah.
Wearing clothes I can't afford.
Without any financial planning.
By the way, I'm not blaming Cosmopolitan magazine for my financial failures.
So, I mean, we met just as
in my kitchen.
Yeah, during your divorce. So, for those people who are listening, a lot of them will be going through that. Can you share a little bit about your experience of divorce?
Oh, gosh. It was the worst, by far the worst thing I have ever experienced in my life. Touch wood, and will continue to be the worst thing because I will never go through that again, ever. I was so ill prepared for, honestly, for everything. But let's just talk about, you know, the grief, the unbelievable, hard-hitting, deep rolling grief that was literally a tidal wave every single morning and every single night. Again, fiscally, completely unprepared. I had a very well-paid job at the time. I worked for a department store, a very famous one. But getting divorced and looking after what were actually, in hindsight, two very young children.
Yeah, they were.
I don't know what I was thinking. I really look back and I think, how about maybe you should have just put up with, you know, this loneliness in the marriage and the disconnect, both emotionally and physically, for just a couple more years. And I do think that I wish I'd taken a breath, but this does tie in with a lot of neurodivergent behavior. So there's an impulsivity and also a kind of rejection that we feel that some neurodivergent people feel, and certainly I do. And it's like an exaggerated version of it. So, for example, at schools, you know, you're sitting down at lunch and a little girl says to you, "I'm saving this seat for my friend." An autistic or ADHD girl would never get over that. It would take her a week.
Oh, wow.
Like a full-on, that would be like the worst thing you'd ever do to her in that moment. The rejection. And so when you're being emotionally or perceived as being emotionally rejected by your husband, I'm not trying to justify why I left in such a hurry, but it's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
And the divorce was horrific. It was horrific because I was ill-prepared. I had a big job. I didn't really fully understand what being a single parent was. My mother was a single parent, but she had my grandparents.
Yeah.
Where we went to live when I was 3 years old. And so I found myself alone, frightened. I describe it in my book, a crack den. Not an actual crack den, clearly. Just a really shit rental that I'd rented via kind of some online video on Winkworth estate agent Kensal Rise. This podcast is not brought to you today by Winkworth Kensal Rise because they are CUNTs. Honestly. But, you know, and I had this fantasy, we're going back to fantasy, like, all right, so what's going to happen today? I'm going to pick up the keys to my new life.
Yes.
I didn't think further than that.
I don't think many people do.
I know you had a very different experience.
Yeah,
to me.
I mean, mine just happened at me, whereas you had a decision-making moment, whereas that I didn't have that. But still, I think, I was going to ask you, do you think it's different if you didn't see it coming or you made the decision?
I have no idea. I mean, I can only talk to you about that and Rosie, and I see that your experiences are very different. But I would argue that the deep grief is as catastrophic, whether you're, I mean, look, I can argue this only because I felt it so deeply that I made the decision.
Which might be surprising to some people that you felt that depth of grief. Understandably, the unpreparedness would be difficult to manage that on its own, but the grief side, when it was you that made that decision.
Yeah, it's a shock to people. And also, let's face it, who would be sympathetic to me, really? Well, it was your decision. You know that old adage, you made your bed, go lie in it, right? So why would I expect sympathy? And that was the other thing. It was my decision. Who do I go crying to now?
But you were in a situation, and as are many, many people, where they're not happy in a relationship and not feeling loved. And that's the number one human need, that love and connection. So if you're not getting it, it's really normal to want to find that, or at least remove yourself from a painful scenario.
Well, I think that's how I've kind of reconciled this. So we had a couples therapist. She was amazing. And, you know, we were together a long time, but I wasn't being touched or held or nothing. And that is a very, very, very weird experience.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to feel a connection, not only to someone else, but to my own body, to my physical self, I would go for a massage. And it's all in the book now, of course, but I had a fling. Now, let's say this fling was the biggest hot mess of all flings. First of all, it wasn't even a fling. It was like a one night plus a few weeks of messaging and blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. And I'm such a crap liar and like such a, that I was found out immediately. Yeah. But the couples therapist, when I was obviously slinking into the couples therapist, having been found out, I was a bit like, oh God, I'm going to get really told off. She said I could have bet my career that Stacy would have done this. Or, not had the affair, but maybe, not an affair. Let's not call it that. It was a one night with an old school friend I bumped into outside a pub on the street in June.
Right.
The June after getting married, because we'd been together for a long time before, so we were only really together for a year.
Right.
After the marriage. I could have bet my career on it, she said. A very, very highly experienced couples therapist.
And her reasoning being?
That we need love, connection. We need humility. We need someone to go home to and just lie in their arms and just talk.
Yeah, we do.
And if we don't have that, it's like the biggest abandonment of all.
Yeah, it does feel like that. And to make the decision, there's something quite empowering about that, I imagine, having not had that choice myself. It's quite disempowering. But when you have the choice and you say, I'm going to put myself first and my healthy relationship first rather than for my partner, that must be quite empowering in some ways.
Well, theoretically, yes. But of course, then what happened was a total and utter global meltdown, COVID. So then we told the children, which was horrible. Yeah. And then we ended up sort of backtracking on a house that I was going to rent, thinking, how on earth can we do lockdown between these two houses? And also, I could have lost my job at any second at that point.
Yeah.
And so the backtracking we did, we ended up living together, moved into the spare bedroom. Yes, okay. That all aside, sure, it should have been a very empowering experience, but it wasn't. It was deathly sad.
Yeah.
It was so sad because in a very, very, excuse my language, fucked up way, I sort of expected his, not round of applause, but his support because neither one of us was happy. So, but what was I expecting? My cake and to eat it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, move out and have his emotional support when I didn't really have it anyway. What was I expecting? And that's the thing that does my head in now. When I reflect upon it, what was I expecting? What did I think the outcome was going to be?
Yeah. I think divorce is known as the second most traumatic life experience we go through. But until I went through it, and it sounds like when you went through it, we don't really consider how traumatic that process is actually going to be. We see it as the solution to something. and it's hideous. I mean, it is hideous. I mean, there are things you could do to make it better before people start thinking, oh gosh.
Well, quite. Had I met you beforehand, that would have been a whole lot easier. I do think there is a lot of, you see, the problem is with our legal system, and you and I have spoken about this.
There's many.
Well, that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah.
With regards to divorce, is that there's just, you're the vulnerable person and the sharks begin to gather.
Yeah.
And they smell blood and the money is just so enticing. And in amongst all the kind of, you could do this and you could have that, it creates more animosity between the couple.
Yeah.
It creates more problems, conversations and communication breaks down even further.
Yeah.
And I know that, you're a huge advocate of actually, well, you have amazing coaches, for example, for all different situations. But imagine if you could just sit with someone, not a therapist, not, a friend, but just sit with someone. Uncoupling is on the desk there, your book. Yeah. But just sit and think, how is this actually going to work?
Yeah.
So a bit like my contract point about, before you go into the marriage and buy the stag do and the hen do and the penis straws and everything
I
else.
had those too.
Yeah, got to have those. And the club in Ibiza and everything else. And I won't go into any other detail. Before we do all of that, let's not focus on that. Let's do the contract.
Yeah.
Now, what would be lovely if there was also that in reverse, right? So you could actually then sit with someone and go, what does this look like? So you're going to now have to take on X amount of childcare because this person has this, this is their schedule, this is your schedule. Yeah. How does it work financially? How does it work emotionally?
Yeah.
What do you agree on? What do you disagree on? Actually, no, we go straight to the lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they cause mayhem.
Yeah. And that's one of my biggest bugbears, as you know, is the legal system. I mean, it doesn't get you off on a great footing a lot of the time. There are some decent lawyers out there, but...
There are. There really are.
Yes, they're hard to find. But anyway, focusing on... Let's talk about friendships, because when you go through a divorce, some friends step up, some friends disappear. How did you experience that?
Yeah, I made a brand new friend during the course of the divorce called Nicole. She stepped up in a way that I've never seen anyone step up to a complete stranger. I mean, look, not a complete stranger, but we had friends in common.
Right.
And the day I moved into aforementioned Crackdown, and what should have happened was I should have gone back to WentworthKensallRise.com. Honestly, sorry. I'm sorry. I should actually just go and have it out with them.
Yeah, maybe.
Let's get that off my chest.
Are they in the book? Because I didn't see them
in the book. I should have just said to them, hey guys, here's the key. Because guess what? This flat is not fit for purpose.
Yeah.
At all. Plug sockets hanging off. Just
so
horrific. Dirty oven that had to be replaced. I mean, when I say crack, it was not a Crackdown, clearly, but it was so disgusting.
And you moved in with your kids coming to visit as well?
I was supposed to move in that weekend and the kids were supposed to stay that weekend and I had to put the whole thing off. So anyway, my point being, Nicole called me the morning of moving in and she said, and I don't know how she knew, bearing in mind it was the first time I'd ever actually spoken to her on the phone, she said, are you okay? Silence. Where are you? Gave her the address. I'll be right there. Wait there. At this point, I'm on the floor. She comes in. She spends the entire day working her socks off to help make it a home. A stranger who became a best friend. And two other girlfriends who really stepped up. Sure, people do. Yeah. They step back because it's ugly and it's gory and it's snotty and it's messy. And actually people are like, but you wanted this.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Get on with it.
Too. Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think for some people it shines a light on their own dysfunctional relationships, which maybe they don't want to see.
One friend's mum said, divorce is catching.
It is, actually.
Is it? What does that actually mean?
Divorce contagion is actually a thing.
What is it?
One of you gets divorced, then there is research to show that there will be other divorces within that group. If you are struggling with a breakup, divorce, or domestic abuse, then you're not alone. Do reach out. You can try our online support groups for free for a week to get some support from my accredited coaches, and also find your tribe, or come and get some one-to-one coaching with one of my coaches too. So you can find more information about that on my website, saradavison.com. One of my clients became the wingman for his recently divorced best friend, and then got a glimpse of what the single life was like. So being his wingman on nights out. And actually he then ended his relationship because he was like, this looks like more fun. Well, I mean, it is more fun, I guess, in some ways.
It is more fun for about
6
months.
Exactly. And then the reality sets in that you are not in that stable, loving relationship.
So what was there, because I'm interested to hear from a male perspective. So when they thought the grass was greener, was it greener? Because for me, I didn't seek out.
It was younger.
Well,
it was definitely younger, not just by a few years, maybe a decade or two.
But so this notion that the grass is greener, I do think is really interesting. So I didn't leave my marriage for anyone. And that, for me, was crucial.
Yeah.
We did couples therapy. There was a blip of this guy for a month, and that was it. The grass is greener is something that keeps. I think it's fueled by hormones in midlife.
It could be.
I think there's a perimenopausal moment for women.
Yeah.
When their last few eggs are popping. Just looking over at the male producer here. He's shaking his head going, oh, God. There is a perimenopausal moment where the eggs are literally like cannonballs. And it's a last chance. What are you going to do? And it's almost like, I really believe.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no medical proof, as far as I know.
Well, I think I see
maybe there is. Doctors, is there? But maybe there is. But I went mental. I lost my mind.
Yeah. Is this where the torture garden comes in? Because I do want to get to that bit for my listeners.
Do you want to come with me next time, Sarah? There is no next time.
For research purposes.
I went once. I mean, everyone was a bit suburban, pedestrian, underneath their GIMP mask. Anyway, moving on. He was called Martin and he lived on the Isle of Dogs. No.
With my clients, they'll often talk about dating younger when they come out of long-term relationships. I mean,
I tell you what. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say a lot of them haven't had sex for a long period of time. A lot of them hadn't. They've been in marriages where, it's not just a couple of years. We're talking even decade or so. So coming out of that relationship, it was a bit of an awakening and a rediscovery and just having some fun again, I guess.
I think what happens with the younger thing, because I have done that too, I think what we look at now, I'm sorry for therapy speak, I've had 5 years of excellent therapy, which I highly recommend. Like, honestly, I think you can't be a middle-aged person without really a lot of deep reflection, because that's how you grow and evolve, right?
Yeah, learning from things, yeah.
During one of these sessions, my therapist said to me, perhaps the younger person is a reflection of the person that you think you are, or the think you are want to be. So it's like a narcissistic mirror, it's called. Freud calls it a narcissistic mirror. So you're looking at this younger person in the hope that it's a reflection of yourself. Right. Now, I think that's quite interesting, really, because if you think about when we are much younger, before we're married, we're sort of, we're harking back to that person that we once were. But by the way, that person we once were, even if you try and reach back and grab that person's hand, they've gone.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, right, when you're reaching back and you've shagged all the young people that you want to shag, etc., let's just cut to it, and you're like, ooh, okay, so I've actually changed. But what's really fascinating to me, not only have I changed, but I don't know who I am. And you think you're going to find it in the dark corners of Soho with a 13 years younger person or 15 years younger person. Maybe you do for a couple of months. But actually, when you're out of that phase, and by the way, that phase is fun, and I was very thin. I really enjoyed it. I fit into samples. When you come out of that, there is a whole existential reckoning of who am I? Then you have to really go deep. And that's when shit gets hard.
Yeah, especially when you're a mum. because you're trying to figure that out as well as looking after, in your case, 2 kids and a dog.
Yes. My favourite child.
How old is your dog now?
3. So she came along when the divorce was happening, and my elderly dog, who had really got me through my 30s wild phase. That's right, 30s, not 20s. I mean, God, it just rolled. I mean, it's wild right into my 30s. And that dog got me through some very dark periods, and he died right in the middle of the second house move.
Right.
And rather than process my grief for him, I could see that on the horizon. So I went out and bought an expensive Cavapoo with my severance money from my company. Don't have any sympathy for me, people.
Well, I think dogs are great therapy, especially Cavapoos. I've got a Cockapoo. I just think they're the best.
She got me through, I tell you, no word of a lie. I mean, that dog got me through some horrendous alone in the middle of the night where you literally feel like your chest, like you're being sat upon by someone really, really heavy. And that feeling is just never going to go.
Yeah.
And when there's another heartbeat next to you, the house is empty, the children's beds are empty. I remember being unable to say that for a long time without even crying. Like walking through my rental and looking into their tidy bedrooms, which is also weird.
Yeah.
And seeing the made bed was just like enough to make me throw up.
I think that is one of the hardest things for mums especially. I know it's for dads as well, but I can only speak as a mum. Not having my son with me, you know, is really tough. Still, it's tough. I mean, you learn to manage that over time, I think. And as you rediscover who you are, when you know who you are without your kids, I think that's one of the positives from divorce. You learn to figure out who you are as a woman, as a person, without your kids. And then you can still be mum, but that's a part of you. It's not all of you.
Yeah. Well, that takes a lot of work and inward reflection. And if you don't do that, I'm afraid, you know, I feel a bit sorry for people who don't or who can't.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be, I cannot be around people. I can't be friends with people. And I'm not talking about doing 5 years of therapy. That's what I needed because of my childhood. I'm talking about, you know, is it yoga? Is it meditation? Is it walking?
Is it writing a book?
Is it writing a book? Is it reading books? Whatever it is that takes some inward reflection and humility and understanding and growth.
Yeah.
I really can't tolerate being around people who are closed off to that because what I don't connect with someone.
Yeah.
I mean, younger people, fine. I'm talking about people my own age. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, I do. And I think your book is a great reflection of everything you've been through. And I just love In Pursuit of Happiness, great picture on the front, by the way.
That's my bare ass.
Yeah, that's your bare ass.
When I was skinny from divorce.
Looking fabulous. Mating, marriage, motherhood, money, and mayhem. I love it. And you really go for it in each of those sections.
Yeah.
There's nothing you...
No.
Well, from our discussions, I mean, it's all in here. Tell me, why did you decide to write it?
I was approached by a publishing house off the back of, I was writing a dating column for The Telegraph.
Right.
And I wanted to write a column about midlife reinvention, which I felt would be far more interesting. But of course, the powers that be at The Telegraph, and I get it, clickbait and everything, they wanted a dating column.
Yeah,
Can I tell you, it was a weekly column. That's a lot of dates. Anyway,
they were all your experiences.
But they were just like, some weeks I'm like, I'm going to have to make this shit up. Like, it was actually very tiresome in the end. In 2 years, it ran its course. Right. Anyway, during this period, actually, do you know what it was? It was when Adele spoke to Oprah overnight in LA, and she was talking about her divorce. And the editor of The Times called me, Nicola Gill, and she said, we've transcribed the interview with Adele and Oprah, and in it she describes dismantling the happiness of her child in pursuit of her own. What do you think of that? Ooh. I sat stunned. I was like, oh my God, that's what I did. So then I wrote this article. And by the way, when you get those calls from editors, you have to do it in 2 hours and boom, it's done. Yeah. And actually that became a viral piece that ended up on #1 most read on Apple News. And that is actually how I got my book deal. Would I have written the book? Absolutely no way.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have written it. But I say absolutely no way, but I didn't go out and pitch a book. Someone came to me. And I suppose when I have built up the community of women that follow me, which, you know, they've been so supportive of me, in a way, like, I didn't feel like I owed it to them. I just knew there was a market for this and I knew there was a readership for it.
What do you think people will take away from this? What's your hope with that?
I hope that women can take away from it that life can be messy and imperfect, and that this idea of pursuing happiness is futile. So happiness has to come from within.
Absolutely.
It cannot come from your external. It is not your children. It is not the measure of your job, your financial status. It's from within. And that's what I mean about this work, which makes me sound like, what's her name? Goop?
Oh, Gwyneth.
Gwyneth. I'm the opposite of Gwyneth. I drink alcohol every day, for example. But the work can mean many different things, but it is happiness has got to be within you.
Yeah.
And that is the key.
Slightly more challenging when we go through the menopause, which is another M, which isn't on the front.
I tell you why it's not on the front, because there are so many amazing women that write so brilliantly, cleverly, eloquently about it. Davina McCall, for example.
Yeah.
Lorraine Candy. What's her name? A fabulous. Bryony Gordon has just written a new book. I did not want to be defined by menopause. However, because I felt like it was a feminist own goal. And I know that a lot of people are probably rolling their eyes, go, but if we don't talk about it, then legislation doesn't get changed. Well, I believe our society is still so patriarchal that to go in a boardroom and say, I'm so having hot sweats, sorry, I need a day off. It feels like a feminist own goal. Well, we're not going to hire 50-year-old women then.
Yeah.
Whereas 50-year-old women, we're in our prime.
Yeah.
We've had the kids. We don't need the maternity. We're not going to have more kids. You should be hiring us. So I avoided it. And then last November and December, I was hit by the menopause, and it was a truck that rolled over me and rendered me bedbound for 2 months. It was so horrendous. Now I can see why it needs to be spoken about. But to have not been through that and to write about it.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I didn't feel like it was part of my identity.
Yeah.
It's still not. I'm fighting it. But my God, it was horrific.
Yeah. And when you're dealing with divorce and then you throw menopause on top, I mean, I think we really underestimate the impact of any of these things, I think, on us and the ability to keep going. But you managed to keep going.
Well, that's why I wanted to add MDMA under the title.
Tell us about how that helps.
Oh, it's wonderful. I'm joking. No, there's a thing in the book where I talk about being at Chiltern Firehouse and someone gives me a sprinkle of MDMA in their nail. Anyway, you have to read the book.
You do have to read the book, by the way. It's brilliant.
But, you know, look, in all seriousness, it's a story of a ordinary working class roots, you know, not so working class in Scotland. I had a very nice childhood in Scotland with my stepfather. It's a story of, it's very, very relatable. Yeah. And it has some really good advice in it, because I didn't want it to be from this white lens. So I asked a lot of people to give their advice. And you're one of the people I asked.
I am, yeah.
And after each chapter, I think those women give brilliant advice.
Yeah.
And I think it's a book about womanhood.
Yeah.
In all its guts and glory.
Yeah.
And I don't know what book 2 will be.
Oh, I can't wait to see. I mean, I loved it. I read it from cover to cover in a day because I just absolutely couldn't put it down. So I definitely recommend people check it out.
Well, the paperback is out on July 11th.
Brilliant.
Which will be much more transportable and economical.
Are you going to do the audio?
The audio is done.
We can get that then, can we?
Yes, it's all on Amazon or audio. I don't know where it is.
Brilliant.
I should know that. I do know that. I've just forgotten. I don't know where it is. Audible?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It was one of the worst things I've ever done.
It's strange when you're just in a little box reading out your own book.
It was horrible because I'd lived it through therapy, the story, relived it when I wrote the book. And then I was like, okay, we're done now. Oh no, we narrate the book and I'm now reliving it. Like the poor guy in the booth was like, you okay? I was like,
I definitely recommend listening to that then, because there's the emotion in there, which I love about it. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about. I mean, your dating stories, being a love addict, all those things I think are hilarious. So do get the book, because you do go into all of those in there. I'd love to leave the listeners with some hope. And what would be your advice to people listening who are going through this, facing those tough times?
Yeah, just know that one day this crippling, throat strangling grief will pass, number one. Number two, that you will carve out a new reality, and it will look nothing like the reality or the dream that you thought it once would. You will come to terms with that, and it might not involve having a house with a garden. You might be in a flat. It might not involve 2 Labradors and baking cakes. I made that bit up. Who can bake cakes? Can you? Buy them from Tesco.
The packet one.
But all these sort of self-imposed dreams that become restrictions, actually, they're all gone. Number 3, you don't have to... Oh, sorry, this is gross.
Are we getting to the hope bit?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You never have to clean the loo after a man again.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. There's hope.
I love it.
No, that my point is this, that you can be the architect of your own life, just as long as you're willing to let go of what you thought it might be or what it should be. That's probably the key.
I love that.
Let that go.
Yeah.
Let that go and just see where you end up.
Yeah.
That's the hope.
Yeah. Very good advice. Very, very good advice. What's next, Stacey? Where can people find you, follow what you're doing?
Well, I've had this really terrible few months with menopause. And so I've had a friend step in and help me organise my life. Because neurodivergency plus hormones is a disaster. And actually, I might write about that.
Yeah. I think that would help a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it would. Given 20% of the population is neurodivergent, I think it really would.
Is it 20%? Wow.
Yeah. Where can you find me next? Do you know what? I am laying low a little bit because I'm trying to earn some money. I've got some nice clients I'm working on some amazing projects with. Yeah. And I'm just I'm actually figuring out what the next steps are. Whereas the old me, hopeful, bit of advice coming in, would be panicking and rushing around and almost without planning.
Yeah.
Because I always had a plan. I thought I always had a plan. But when you end up and then you're like, oh my God, my life looks it's unrecognizable to me.
Yeah.
The plans sort of go by the wayside.
They do.
And you're like, okay, how about I sit and take a breath and then the plan will come to me.
I love it.
In the meantime, you can find me on Instagram until further notice.
I love it. And my last question, which I ask all my guests, is as you know, my podcast is called Heartbreak to Happiness. So what is happiness for you, Stacey?
My 50th birthday last weekend in Menorca, where I bought a little tiny house in a little city called Ciutadella, which is north of the island, which is, honestly, it looks like a film set. And I invited about 70 people, 30 came. It was an absolute riot. I laughed until I couldn't speak. And knowing that you can do that kind of thing when you're on your own.
Yeah.
So have a big birthday bash and not having to invite his friends or his friend's wife that you find really boring. And that for me is just, that is happiness. Friends, togetherness, gatherings on your terms.
I love it. Stacey, as always, a real giggle. Lots of really good advice. And thank you so much for being a phenomenal guest.
I think I've grown up.
I think you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by the leading family law department of Pennington, Manchers, Cooper, a full-service international law firm with its main base in London. The department provides expertise in all areas of family law and specialises in high-value financial and complex children cases. The lawyers believe in offering an outstanding level of service and support to their clients, many of whom have international connections. To contact the team, please email anna.warwood@penningtonslaw.com and quote Sarah Davison. Don't forget to follow the podcast, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode.
That's it for today's episode of Heartbreak to Happiness. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to win a free ticket to one of Sarah's virtual retreats. The retreats are a transformative combination of live webinars with Sarah herself, coupled with empowering online video programs designed to help you cope better with your breakup and start feeling happy again. For more details, head on over to heartbreaktahappinesspodcast.com, where you can also get a copy of Sarah's free gift. Thank you, and join us again on the next episode for another dose of Heartbreak to Happiness.